All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica, and my team members are Asmita, Ellie, Heather, and Heki. On behalf of my team, I would like to thank you all for being here today. I would also like to thank our project partners, the WMA and its members, the City of Manchester, and our stakeholders. With a special thanks to the Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities, our advisors, and our alumni mentor. Thank you all for your help and guidance on this project. Before we go any further, what is a watershed and why is a watershed management plan needed? A watershed is the area of land that drains into a lake or stream. Watersheds can be small, like the area that drains into the creek behind your house, or watersheds can be large. Think of all the land, streams, and rivers that drain into the Mississippi River. Water that travels over the surface or through groundwater may pick up contaminants like sediment, chemicals, or waste and then deposit them into a body of water. A watershed management plan can help the communities in a watershed make changes on the land to keep pollutants from washing into the water. This map shows the location of the Maquoketa River watershed within the state and which counties it touches. The Maquoketa River watershed covers over 1 million acres, 9 counties, and has over 72,000 residents. As you can see here, Delaware County and Jackson County make up for just under half of the entire watershed. There are also 80 townships and 9 counties. So what is the Maquoketa River Watershed Management Plan? It is a living document created for the Maquoketa River Watershed Management Authority. The WMA is tasked with establishing guidance and allocating funds provided to them to encourage flood mitigation and water quality improvement practices. Because watersheds don't share boundaries with man-made limits like county or city lines, it is necessary that jurisdictions within a watershed have an integrated approach to solving these problems, which the Watershed Management Plan can provide. Here shows a very abbreviated timeline of the development of the plan. It can be split up into data gathering and public engagement. During the data gathering phase, we reviewed all of the watershed management plans in the state of Iowa, as well as other relevant information. And during the public outreach part, we had several outreach events, including a survey, focus groups, and public meetings, and a photo voice website. A brief overview of the existing data we gathered and analyzed shows that there are multiple impaired streams and lakes, an increase in runoff levels, and a higher risk of flood and drought events, as well as an increased risk in soil erosion. You can also see at the bottom the major flooding events, as well as in the map on the top right, all of the red areas are the impaired rivers and streams. So for community outreach, we did this after the data gathering and analysis, and our outreach activities throughout the life of the project consisted of 2 parts, paid versus unpaid advertisements. In the paid advertisements phase, our team has been able to design and advertise a poster which informed the local residents about an upcoming public forum where they could get together and share their opinions. We advertised the poster through some of the local newspapers, such as the Maquoketa Sentinel, the Monticello Express, Dyersville Commercial, Cascade Pioneer, and as well as the Manchester Press. As a result, a surprising number of watershed residents showed up and helped inform our plan. And then here are some of the posters designed by the team. In the unpaid part of our advertisement, we utilized the local media partners that you'd seen in the previous slide, and worked with the partners of the Maquoketa River Watershed Management Authority. We also utilized the services of the Farm Bureau spokesman, as well, more than 20 newspapers and some local radio stations. Here you can see some of the photos that we have gathered from the Photo Voice website, which is a website that allows people to share photos and memories that they have of the watershed. And we had just over 10 submissions were made. And some of those photos will be included in the final plan. We also hosted a community survey, and this was mainly online. We reached over 400 people. We reached a lot of people, but we had over 400 respondents, and it gathered views, values, and experiences related to a lot of topics related to the watershed, such as water quality, flooding, recreation, conservation strategies, and information resources. We also had 5 focus groups, all by invitation, one focusing on recreation, one focusing on public leaders, mainly in the urban areas, and 3 on agriculture in 3 of the sub-watersheds. These focus groups had between 5 and 10 participants each and were critical in informing our plan. We also held a public input meeting to better understand the priorities of the residents, and we heard from about 30 different people. And we also had them prioritize the goals and objectives that we will be presenting soon. And we advertised this through some of the media that was presented earlier, as well as on the Maquoketa River Watershed Management Authority's website. We will now move on to the goals and objectives part of the plan. Each team member will speak about the goal that they focused on. One important thing to note is that for this presentation, we'll only be covering some of the surface level details, and we dive deeper into the strategies and possible funding sources for these goals in the plan.
All right, hello everyone, I'm Ellie Mullins. So I'll be talking about goal 1, which is all about water quality. So improving water quality is one of the WMA's biggest tasks as an organization, and it was also found to be one of the biggest concerns for the residents of our survey and for many of the focus groups. So our focus groups noted the changes in cloudiness and dirt in the river after storms, and while opinions differed quite a bit about the quality of the water in the river, many survey respondents agreed that it is important to protect water quality. Similar results from the focus groups survey and public input meeting informed our objectives and strategies for this and other goals. Around 60% were very concerned about agricultural water pollution, as well as urban or industrial water pollution. As well, around 47% were concerned about the effect of water quality on fisheries and the combined effect of water quality and flooding on recreation and tourism. Lastly, 43% agree that they would be willing to pay more through like taxes or fees to improve water quality and reduce flooding. So objective 1, you can stay on that slide, Jess, sorry. Thank you. So objective 1, focuses on slowing water down and letting it soak through the soil to reduce the amount of runoff that can take soil and other pollutants into the water. The main strategies that this objective focuses on are no-till, which was found to be widely used within the watershed, cover crops, which a lot of people showed interest in wanting to learn a bit more about. Additionally, filter strips along streams, the use of windbreaks, rotational grazing for pasture land. And then also getting involved with Iowa State University. All right, so we can move on to objective 2. So this is all about using less and making the most out of fertilizer on agricultural fields. The plan focuses on soil testing and stock tests as its main strategy to maximize nutrient application. In addition, focuses on reducing use through strategies that increase soil health, altering the nutrient application times, methods, and sources, and again, working with Iowa State. We can move on to objective 3. So this one focuses on doing a similar thing, but in a more urban setting. So for this one recommendation we made was to provide incentives for and focus on stormwater management strategies. So these could be things for cities like doing a survey of their stormwater system, implementing new management strategies, or things for individuals like rain gardens, permeable pavers, things like that. Objective 4. So this one is to manage bacteria from livestock, sewage, and pet waste. So this would start by doing a watershed-wide livestock assessment to kind of see where all of those sources may be. It would go on to identify priority feedlots and livestock operations. As well, it would be encouraging innovative and effective manure management strategies. Objective 5 is to increase the implementation of wetlands to act as natural filters of our water. So encouraging member communities to, start wetland projects and also kind of supporting these as an organization. And then the last objective, objective 6, the WMA has been collecting water quality data, and objective 6 is to keep doing this to continue to gather good quality data to inform practices and evaluate the efforts so far. Now we'll move on to goal 2, which Heather will take over.
Hi everyone, my name is Heather Flynn. I am going to cover goal 2, which is improve watershed flood management. This section will discuss the objectives necessary to improve watershed flood management in the Maquoketa River watershed. Increases in the intensity and the frequency of extreme events in the watershed are consequences of a changing climate, and 90% of survey respondents report they're concerned about flooding, either very concerned or somewhat concerned, and 70% have indicated that they've experienced flooding directly in the past. The purpose of the plan states that watershed management is intended to offer a long-range perspective for both current and future flooding issues. Mitigating flooding through water management and the building and maintenance of healthy soil and ecosystems is key to the continued success of the Maquoketa River watershed's communities, farms, ecosystems, and economies. Our first objective to address this goal is to advance the mission and goals of the WMA by fostering partnerships between agencies, both governmental and non-governmental organizations, and political entities regarding flood prevention and recovery. In the past decade, many cities and counties in the Maquoketa watershed have incorporated strategies mitigating flood hazards and leaving us with a wealth of information to draw from. Both current and past planning efforts will be utilized for effective flood mitigation and prevention. And some of the actions include working with flood mitigation committees to serve and communicate the purpose of the Watershed Management Authority, facilitating stakeholder meetings, encouraging agencies, organizations, partners to link online media and social media resources, and fostering and encouraging participation in projects that bring local, state, and federal partners together. Objective 2 is implementing a comprehensive program of targeted activities designed to reduce flood risk and improve water quality in the Maquoketa River watershed. Fostering implementation of this plan through expanded technical assistance and on-site practices is key to success for flood mitigation. This plan prioritizes practices that will minimize disturbance and maximize the presence of current soil cover conditions and biodiversity. It recommends using cover crops to recover flooded fields, cutting down on erosion, weeds, improving water quality, and enriching the soil's characteristics. Minimizing disturbance of the soil, keeping the ground covered, and planting cover crops with deep roots in between cash crops, replenishing the nutrients in the soil, adding earthworms and insects back into the system, and actively promoting no tillage or partial or strip tillage, reduced tillage, etc. We're also recommending installing permeable pavement, bioswales in urban areas, and increasing impervious surfaces and articulated pavers. Objective 2.3 is increasing awareness related to water quantity and strengthening connections between land management practices and flooding. For this objective, we have a variety of strategies that include working with the community to find residents who are at direct flood risk, raising flood risk awareness in schools, discussing ways to help small farmers, nonprofits, etc., submit project applications for best management practice funding, both from a level of effort and an application process perspective, and completing stream bank erosion assessments and gully assessments.
All right, so my name is Heki, and I'll be talking about goal number 3. So our next goal is to increase awareness and involvement in the watershed. The purpose of this goal is to not only educate the WMA about the needs of the watershed through communication, but also to raise awareness among the public on mainly 3 fronts. Number 1, to familiarize them with the watershed itself and issues that it's facing. Number 2, to tell them about the work that is already being done in the watershed and what they can do to help. And lastly, to make the WMA a trusted source of guidance and information for the public by providing ample opportunities for them to connect and get to know each other. So the reason we chose this goal number 3, is because in the comprehensive watershed survey that we conducted at the start of the year, the results indicated that there is a great need for raising awareness among the residents of the watershed. For example, when we asked who needs to be actively involved in the watershed to improve the water quality, only 10% of the respondents chose urban residents. What this means is that not a lot of urban residents think that it's their responsibility too, to contribute towards the health of the watershed. Furthermore, only 22% believe that rural landowners need to be involved. We need to educate them that rural landowners play a key role in the watershed health, and especially watershed quality, water quality. And we need to increase this percentage. Similarly, in our survey, we found out that 43% of the respondents said that they are interested in employing best management practices on their farms, but they need more information. Through this plan, the WMA needs to reach out to these residents and educate them and help them with whatever they need to start employing the best management practices before they lose interest. And last but not least, through our survey, we learned that 46% of the respondents are willing to even pay more to improve water quality and reduce flooding. What this means is that a large population is already willing to be proactive to help the watershed. All we need to do through this plan and this goal is to teach this group of residents how to be proactive and bring the rest of the watershed to the level where they too understand the impact of the Maquoketa River in their lives and are willing to do something about it. So these were some of the reasons why I incorporated goal number 3. The objective that would help us achieve these goals are the following. So number 1 is to educate the local residents to make individual efforts and connections with the watershed. This could be achieved in many ways, including by creating watershed awareness programs to raise awareness among the residents, as well as people who come and visit Maquoketa River for recreational purposes. The activities involved in that would be creating and promoting seasonal recreational events for the public, and then using signs, maps, demonstrations, short PowerPoints to create awareness on a very basic level. Another strategy to implement this objective would be to launch and maintain a stream cleanup program. The details of the cleanup program are included in the plan, but the short version of it would be to launch and adopt a stream program where a group of individuals, families, and colleagues even would be able to adopt a certain portion of the stream and take responsibility for it and be responsible for cleaning it once or twice a year through recreational activities, of course. So our next objective would be to ensure all stakeholders in the watershed are included in the activities and programs that take place within the watershed. This could be achieved by fostering and facilitating urban residents, as well as farmer leadership in the watershed management projects. Some of the actions required to do that would be, first of all, creating a task force responsible for fostering leadership in the watershed management projects, recruiting other farmers to participate in projects and activities, demonstrating best management practices on farm, providing testimonials for farmers, mentoring other farmers, promoting best management practices for water quality, and many more. Yeah, so the third objective of this goal is to expand the WMA network within the watershed through outreach. So one out of many strategies to achieve this objective would be to bring in additional partners that may have vested interest in the watershed that are already not on the table, and prioritize efforts for local governments such as cities, municipalities, counties, and other authorities needed to achieve the WMA outcomes. And last but not least, our final objective would be to work to achieve an effective interagency cooperation with relevant authorities in the region. So in order to promote a cost-effective and efficient approach to water resource management, interagency partnerships are vital. So the job of this objective is to help establish WMA within the region and make sure that partnerships are cultivated and information flow is efficient. So one of the strategies to implement this objective would be to work effectively with the upriver, downriver, adjacent WMAs, the state, the county, the local municipalities, as well as soil and water conservation authorities and other departments within the region. So these were some short information about the goals and objectives. The detail will obviously be in the plan. And to talk about the next goal, I would like to hand it over to my next team member.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Asmita and I'll be talking about our fourth goal for the plan. The fourth goal is to preserve, protect, and improve ecologically sensitive habitats and ecosystems in the watershed. So ecologically sensitive areas in a watershed include aquatic and wildlife habitats and wetlands and floodplains. So wetlands are the areas which are fully saturated with water and have unique vegetations growing on it. And floodplains are the areas that are besides water streams, which is where the water flows in case of flooding. The unique mix of biodiversity in these areas provide opportunities to create recreational spots in the watershed. And as pointed out in all of the focus groups conducted by our team, recreational facilities are very important in establishing intimate connection between nature and surrounding communities, which in turn increases awareness among people about watershed health. Photo Voice participants also highlighted recreational activities, scenic beauty, and being closer to nature as being major interactions with the watershed. And our stakeholder survey showed that majority of participants were concerned about risk of flooding and drought in the watershed. Likewise, majority of the respondents mentioned that they find the water quality throughout the watershed to be okay or bad, and don't feel enough is being done to address the water quality issues. So ecologically sensitive areas provide natural water filtration and storage, which leads to improving water quality and minimizing the risk of flooding and drought events because it lets water seep into the stream slowly over time. So this is very important in achieving or mitigating the major issues in the watershed that are felt by the residents. So because of their sensitivity and vital role in maintaining a healthy watershed, we determine this to be one of our primary goals. So the objectives that we have identified are 6 of them for this goal. The first objective is to prioritize natural resource sites in the watershed for preservation, protection, and restoration. And under the strategies are to collaborate with various governmental and environmental agencies in Iowa to determine the levels of sensitivity, degradation, and urgency of restoring natural resource sites in the watershed based on time and budget constraints. And then to prioritize the most sensitive areas that require regular or urgent attention. This is very important objective as this guides the remaining of the objectives of this goal. Also, just to mention some of the strategies we have are just to maintain an inventory of native and non-native vegetations, birds and animals, and aquatic spaces, and source water sites in the watershed, and identify the natural features and monitor the changes, and then prioritize the restoration activities. Now moving on to the second objective for this goal. The second objective is to protect the stream banks, shorelines, and buffer areas within the watershed. So this is especially to minimize soil erosion and improve water quality. So some of the strategies under this objective are to collaborate with city governments by limiting human activities and planting, increasing the area of native vegetations, the cover of native vegetations, and providing natural infrastructures like riprapping in the stream banks, and restoring buffer areas, and identifying any migrated streams, and provide space for streams' natural movement. Now moving on to the third objective for this goal. The third objective is to restore wetlands and riparian areas in the watershed. So riparian areas are areas that are nearby water streams, which have a unique mix of biodiversity. So by restoring their original features and minimizing human activities, this objective addresses the issue of loss of wetlands, which majority of the survey respondents have mentioned to have felt. Some of the strategies under this objective are to restore natural ecological features like slopes, shorelines, stream channels, and monitoring any hydrological changes in streams in the watershed. Moving on to the fourth objective, which is to improve habitat conditions for native flora, fauna, and marine lives in the watershed. So the strategies under this objective is to expand the coverage of native vegetations, improving stream habitats, and establishing wildlife corridors to minimize obstruction in their migratory behaviors. So majority of our survey respondents have indicated that they are concerned for the loss of wildlife and aquatic habitat in the watershed. So this objective addresses that. Moving on to our fifth objective. So it is to restore floodplain connectivity with the watershed by restoring vegetations, minimizing infrastructural barriers, and connecting floodplains back to the streams in case of disconnection. This will help in restoring natural capacity of floodplains to restore floodwater and minimize the impact of the flood. So our last objective for this goal is to protect source water sites in the watershed. And so the source water sites in the watershed are the wells from which majority of the residents in the watershed get the drinking water supply. So some of the strategies for this objective are to encourage residents to participate in voluntary programs like source water protection program offered by Iowa Department of Natural Resources, and by utilizing the state and federal support that exists in terms of technical resources and financial ones. So this is all about the fourth goal of this plan. Now Jess will take over for the last goal of our plan.
So goal 5 focuses on establishing the WMA as a trusted community resource. And we can do that through 3 objectives. The first one is to make the WMA representative of the people and interests in the watershed. There are a variety of background and interests within the watershed, and each one can bring a new perspective or idea to the WMA. This could include different occupations, such as farmer, school teacher, manager of a restaurant, or could have interests such as kayaking, or people who like to take hikes or go bird watching. All of these people have very valid interests and experience, and it's important to make sure the WMA is representative of that. The second objective is to connect communities with resources specific to the watershed. This could be funding opportunities or examples of best management practices. And one of the ways that the WMA can do this is by utilizing the data repository that will be provided by our group. And it has all of the data and analysis that we have done through the past 10 months, and included stuff that we just couldn't get to. And it's important to share those with the communities within the watershed to help them achieve flood mitigation or improving water quality. And the third objective is to recognize and identify vulnerable populations in the watershed that may be affected by poor water quality and flooding. So this would be helpful for the communities and residents within the watershed because it would inform the necessary parties if there were any vulnerable populations that may need extra assistance in the event of flooding or drinking water contamination. So this goal is important to the management plan because the watershed affects everyone in it, and anyone can enjoy and benefit from the watershed. Also, by having a range of ideas and perspectives, the WMA can only continue to get better. So next steps. At the moment, we are finishing up the final touches to the written plan as well as the condensed version of the plan. And we will hand that along with the data repository and the technical report over to the Maquoketa River Watershed Management Authority. The WMA recently received a grant, and they will be using it to hire someone for 18 months to help with the implementation of this plan, along with many other things. And there are talks of another Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities team working with the WMA starting in the fall. Thank you all so much for your time and attention. Working on this project has been so educational and a great opportunity for myself and my team. Thank you all, and we will take any questions at this time.